All right, let's jump right into this explainer on the psychological anatomy of the silent treatment. Picture this. You're right in the middle of a super tense conversation, trying to hash something out, and then, suddenly, nothing. Crickets. The other person just completely shuts down. They pull away and, man, the air just gets so heavy. Today, we're unpacking a dynamic that is incredibly common, yet, honestly, totally misunderstood by a lot of us. We're going to break down a behavior that kind of seems harmless on the surface, maybe even peaceful to some, but is actually one of the absolute most damaging forms of control you can face in any relationship.
No yelling, no arguing, just silence. I mean, a lot of us have lived through this exact scenario, right? You're going back and forth trying to work through a tough issue and boom, the walls just fly up. The other person totally stops participating, they take away their voice, they avoid eye contact, they basically remove their entire presence. And look, from the outside it might seem like this highly mature way to avoid a messy, loud, blown-out fight. But the reality playing out just beneath that surface, it's a whole different ballgame. It is not a peaceful resolution. It's actually a deeply intense, active state of tension.
Which brings us right to a huge, core question. Is silence harmless or is it control? We so often confuse silence for a basic need for space. We think, oh, they just need a minute to cool off. But in this explainer, we're going to dig into exactly why this prolonged withdrawal happens, why it hurts the person on the receiving end so deeply, and why realizing that this is fundamentally about power can completely change the game for how you handle it next time.
So let's move right into our first layer here. Section 1, punishment, not communication. Let's look at how this behavior acts as an active weapon rather than just a quick pause.
Okay, the crucial takeaway here is that this tactic is purely punitive. The silent treatment is the act of withholding conversation specifically to make someone else feel the weight of their quote-unquote wrongdoing, and doing all of this without ever actually discussing what went down. Just think about how that feels in the real world. Instead of teaming up to solve a problem, the silence itself becomes this massive, suffocating weight dropped right on your shoulders. It's basically a way for someone to silently scream, "You're going to feel this. You're going to suffer for what you did, and I am absolutely not going to help you figure it out." The ultimate goal here isn't to resolve anything. The goal is retribution.
Now, what's genuinely fascinating, and maybe a little scary, is the biological reason why being on the receiving end feels so unbearable. That brings us to Section 2. The neuroscience of silence.
The science here is mind-blowing. It shows us that social exclusion literally equals physical pain. Yeah, psychology and neuroscience have proven that being subjected to the silent treatment, which is really just an acute, targeted form of social exclusion, activates the exact same regions in your brain that process actual physical pain. So when someone gives you the silent treatment, your brain registers it as physical harm. You aren't just feeling sad or bummed out, you are physiologically hurting. That is exactly why the silence feels so agonizing. It's definitely not all in your head. Your nervous system is reacting to a real, measurable injury. Crazy, right?
And because of that intense neurological pain, the receiver gets trapped in this devastating three-step anxiety loop. Step 1, the silence begins. The person withdraws, dropping you into a total void without a compass. Then, very quickly, you hit Step 2. Self-doubt sets in. Humans are quite literally wired for connection, so when that gets severed out of nowhere, you start intensely doubting yourself. You overthink every tiny interaction, obsessing over your own words, trying to figure out what on earth you did wrong. Which leads to Step 3, over-apologizing just to end the pain. The person on the receiving end will often start frantically apologizing for things they didn't even do, totally abandoning their own boundaries, all just to make that physical feeling suffering stop and get things back to normal.
To protect ourselves from this loop, we absolutely have to know where to draw the line between toxic behavior and a genuinely healthy pause. So let's jump to Section 3, space versus a silent treatment. There is a massive, fundamental difference between setting a healthy boundary and wielding a toxic weapon. Side A, taking healthy space. This involves clear communication. It's saying, hey, I need some time to cool down. Let's talk about this in an hour. You see, it has a parameter. It's honest, and most importantly, it respects the connection between you two. Then you have Side B, the silent treatment. This is completely open-ended. It lacks communication entirely. It leaves you spinning, wondering if they're ever going to speak to you again. Healthy space protects the relationship from escalating. The silent treatment is designed to punish and make the other person suffer. Nailing down this distinction is absolutely your best defense.
So if it literally causes neurological pain, we have to look at the psychology of the person doing it. Why rely on this? Section 4. Why people use it.
Well, there are usually two main drivers here. First, it often comes from a complete inability to handle conflict directly.
When someone doesn't have the emotional tools, the vocabulary, or just the maturity to handle a tough disagreement, their automatic defense is to pull the plug and shut the whole system down. They retreat because they literally have no idea how to engage. The second reason, and honestly the much more insidious one, is that it's a learned tactic for control. They've done this in past relationships and they know exactly how devastating it is. They know for a fact that if they stay quiet long enough, the sheer discomfort is going to break you. They know you'll cave, drop your boundaries, and beg for their attention just to end the silence. It completely flips the power dynamic in their favor.
If you have ever been caught in this dynamic, please take this one key insight away from this explainer. Needing to explain yourself into someone's silence isn't healthy communication. You should absolutely never have to exhaust yourself tossing words into a dark void, just desperately hoping you magically guess the right password to fix everything. When you're forced to do that, you're playing a rigged game. And that is simply not how healthy adult relationships work. Recognizing that you deserve a partner who will actually sit at the table with you and work through the awkward, uncomfortable stuff, that is step one to breaking this deeply entrenched cycle.
So I'm going to leave you with this final thought to chew on. Will you step out of the cycle of silence? Now that you've seen the psychological and neurological gears turning behind this behavior, you have the power to call it what it is. It's not peace, it's not just taking space, it is control. The next time you hit that wall of silence, just remember, your worth is not dictated by their willingness to speak. Thanks for joining me for this explainer, guys. Keep learning, keep enforcing those boundaries, and I will catch you in the next one.